Well, hello and welcome to Wake Up Wednesday. I may change that to Welcoming Wednesday or something of that nature, welcoming you into my heart, my home, my thoughts, my life, and we'll see what happens. So I have been in the COVID realm. This is day 5, and so during this time, I've been doing a lot of reading. I've messed around with my wall that you all know about, looking at a lot of memorabilia, and it's always a time of reflection. At least it can be, if you choose, and that's what I choose. And so it's been a wonderful time to look at a lot of things and reevaluate. And so what I want to do is today we're going to have story time. And so this is something that we've done with my family growing up, with my children. It was a big deal to read out loud as a family. And my husband and I still do this to this day. We read out loud. We find a book that we are interested in, a novel or some other type of book. Right now we're reading Finding Me by Viola Davis. And we just take turns reading a chapter out loud, or if I feel like reading a couple of chapters, or if he feels like, or if one of us doesn't want to read, we just do what works for us. But it is like the old story time days, which I think are super special. I hope that you read with people you love, your children, your grandchildren, your husband, your friends, book clubs, all sorts of wonderful ways to do this. But let's get on with the message. And so I want to read to you from this book, Walking Home, Sonia Choquette, where she's at a difficult point in her life and she's trying to make some decisions and move forward. She's having a difficult time in her marriage. Um, she recently lost her husband and her brother in a very short span of time, and she decides to walk the Camino de Peralta. And this is the trail in Spain that is pretty famous for people who are, well, she calls it walking home, home to herself. And so I wanted to read to you from a section that I found very intriguing, thought-provoking, inspiring. Chapter 19 is just a section of the trail, and this gives you a glimpse of what the book is about. Walking the Camino was a lot like walking to the Emerald City in the sense that it was an epic journey back to a more authentic and holy state of being. Each day presented another obstacle and a gift. It was like a treasure hunt to discover the gift without getting thrown off course by the obstacle, just like Dorothy and her friends had to do in The Wizard of Oz. It was a cold but sunny day as I made my way along the route, which was mostly barren and flat. I was glad I'd remembered to put a power bar in my pocket this morning, even though I'd already had 2 breakfasts, because I was starving again after only 2 hours of walking. And by the way, at this point in the book, she'd been really sick for several days, but you can't really stop. You could if you really had to, but she had these pre-scheduled places where she was staying, and she was having this big backpack sent forward from place to place. It would have been a lot. So the easier thing to do is just to keep walking, but she had had a fever and sore throat for several days at this point. So she said, as I sat and enjoyed my bar, I noticed quite a few pilgrims on the path today that I had never seen and wondered where they came from. Maybe they took the train and started from there. I had overheard what looked to me like a 50-year-old pretty blonde woman at the hostel 2 days ago who had arrived in Sahagan and then taken a taxi to Dia in order to begin there. She came to complete the Camino at the point where she and her husband had left off 3 years earlier. They had planned to come back and finish this year and had the tickets and everything ready to go, but then her husband unexpectedly died in a freak skiing accident. She was devastated and hoped that walking the rest of the way on her own would help heal her grief. She said they had so much fun together, even though he didn't like his day job as a high school chemistry teacher, and they went on all these adventures to create a more interesting life than the one he had carved out for himself at work. Now that he was gone, she said she was very lonely and felt she had nothing more to live for. She wasn't talking to me when she shared all of this. I just happened to be sitting within earshot. She also said at least 5 times that she felt that she was 60 years old. She was too old to ever find a man to love her. In fact, she was absolutely convinced that without her youth, no man would be interested in her ever again. So what was there to look forward to? While I had a lot of compassion for her, it irritated me to listen to that. I suppose that many women feel a certain amount of pressure to stay young and beautiful because our world is so youth obsessed. But to hear a woman actually invalidate herself due to her age and accept her fear of failing to ever again attract a man as a fact was disturbing to me. It took everything in me not to jump up, tell her she was beautiful, crazy for thinking that as she aged, she lost her value and could only expect to be rejected, as if being loved by a man were the only reason for living in the first place. I would have, but it didn't seem right at the time. I knew she wouldn't hear me, so I just listened and felt the defeat in her spirit. Of course, I knew she was still in grief, and with that comes all kinds of fears. But then again, I thought as I finished my bar and got up, maybe I had to hear her just in case I might secretly share some of those fears. After all, I am just as invested as the next woman in making myself look beautiful and, yes, youthful. Or at least I am when I'm not walking the Camino. Even here, though, I still took care of my skin and protected it from the sun so I wouldn't get wrinkled. So, was I really any different from her? Did I drink a sip of the same poison cup of bullshit that suggests I am only as valuable as how attractive I am to a man or how young I look? Maybe I did, because listening to her made me feel so uncomfortable. So much so that I moved away from her as soon as I could because her energy bothered me so much. Maybe I overheard her because the Camino is now asking me to look at my own fears about aging and needing male approval. I thought maybe it's time I embrace the crone in me, stop running from her, and approve of my aging self. Maybe with age comes wisdom and inner beauty that is unsurpassed and powerful. Maybe it's time I let myself connect to this. I thought about what I believe is beautiful. I know how much I love and need beauty and how much I try to create it in my life. I have a beautiful home. I create beautiful feelings in my students when I'm working. But did I feel beautiful? I mostly did, and yet, with all the loss and grief I'd been feeling in the past few years, I didn't feel as beautiful as I wanted to feel. I also felt that being angry made me feel less beautiful. Not that I believed anger was not okay. Sometimes the lightning bolt of anger beautifully shatters what harms us and frees us from its grip. That anger is beautiful and bold and brilliant. But that wasn't the anger I was thinking of. The kind of anger that isn't beautiful is static and stagnant. Stuck anger, anger that resents and blames and acts like a victim. That isn't beautiful. That kind of anger is ugly and steals away the beauty of life. I suffered that loss of beauty when I was languishing in those stuck feelings, and at least now, thank goodness, I was liberating that stuck anger and returning to the beauty of my spirit as I walked every day. Thank you, Camino, I said out loud in gratitude. Thank you. I also thought of that woman's other dominant energy, which was fear. Her fear was palpable. She was swimming in it. I prayed for her to find her way to center and away from this dark feeling of fear that engulfed her. How awful to feel so powerless to overcome it. As I thought of her, I wondered if I too had some of those same fears in me. Maybe that woman, so afraid of aging and fearing that she would never be loved again, was more courageous than I was. At least she was open and honest about it. She announced her fears while I hid mine away in the shadows. More thoughts came cascading down. Maybe the point of walking the Camino was to stop and look at all the feelings and fears I hide from myself because they take me away from my power and beauty. Maybe it was time to stop judging even those dark parts of myself and just acknowledge and accept that I have some of these fears at times, just as she did. I wasn't possessed or obsessed with them, but they were there. And maybe now it was time to bring my fears to the light so they too could move on, just as she so courageously had. Was I ready to release my fear of getting older and giving up the glow of youth for the inner light of wisdom? Honestly, not yet. I still wanted to feel young. I wanted to be young. But what if I did give up those attachments? What if I did fully embrace myself, an aging woman who no longer carried the fear of becoming the crone? What then? Could I simply be comfortable in my own skin and love myself for who I am today, all of me and all of my years? I wanted to say yes to those questions. More than anything, I wanted to say and mean and believe that yes, with every cell of my being, but I wasn't fully there yet. I also knew that all the grief and sorrow I carried in my bones around my failed marriage and other failed relationships stemmed from me not being there yet. As much as I hated to admit this, I knew that it was true. When I saw that other woman reject herself, it felt sad, like a tremendous loss to herself and the world. I don't want to lose any part of myself or deny any part of myself to the world. I wanted to embrace, celebrate, fully love, and share all parts of me. No wonder my throat is on fire today, I thought. My own words, and more important, my own thoughts and beliefs, have not loved and honored me. It isn't that my husband didn't love me, it's that I didn't love me, and then I blamed him. My fiery throat was purging all that had me by the throat, all that made me feel as though I was not enough, never enough. It was time to free myself from all that caused me to reject myself and instead fully love my beautiful self. I prayed to arrive in this place in me. That is my Santiago. That is where I am going. As these thoughts flooded my mind, I remembered a Native American blessing that says, "May you walk in beauty." I decided right then and there I would do just that. I would walk in the beauty of me today, all day. And I did, silently singing, "This girl is on fire." There are so many good things in there and so many things that I really want to continue to talk about um, in future conversations, in future Welcoming Wednesdays, and always welcome your thoughts and your perspective. But boy, this thing about aging and about beauty, it's so real as I'm approaching the 60 mark and as I see pictures and as I see my beautiful skin and all the things. And then I also thought about the things I'm doing to try to maintain youth instead of just allowing aging to happen gracefully and naturally. So that's another thing I'm going to explore is my hair color specifically, because all up in there in my roots, probably I'm 80% gray. And so I think that I am finally ready to start owning that. So by my 60th birthday, which will be next May, and I will be rafting the Grand Canyon with my husband and my three children, I will have a much more natural hair color, and I'm going to own where I'm at in my life and the wisdom that I have gained over the years and the beauty of aging in a world that is so incredibly obsessed with youth. So until next time, walk in your beauty.